I'm Alberta Hayes, 62 years young, and for the past 8 years my only son has conveniently forgotten my birthday to vacation with his mother-in-law. Same week, same excuse, same heartbreak. This year, when my sister called asking about my birthday plans, I simply smiled and said, "Nothing special." Little did my family know about the inheritance I'd kept secret for 3 years, or the oceanfront villa I was about to purchase. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most. Family has always been my cornerstone. After becoming a widow at 50, I poured everything into being there for my son Jackson. Teaching high school English for 30 years gave me purpose, but nothing compared to the joy of family. At least that was what I believed. I raised Jackson alone after my husband Thomas died unexpectedly of a heart attack. We had a special bond, just the two of us against the world. He was my pride and joy, a kind boy who grew into what I thought was a considerate man. When Jackson married Stephanie 10 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms. I was determined to be the supportive mother-in-law, never intrusive, always helpful when asked. I baked cookies for their new home, offered to babysit whenever needed, and kept my opinions to myself, even when I disagreed with their decisions. Stephanie was always cordial but distant. She came from a family where her mother Judith ruled with an iron fist, disguised in designer clothing. Judith was 4 years younger than me, but carried herself like she had decades of additional wisdom. She had divorced, lived in a sprawling house in the suburbs, and made sure everyone knew about her country club membership. From the beginning, there was an unspoken competition that I refused to participate in. When Judith bought Stephanie an expensive handbag, I complimented it sincerely. When she planned elaborate holiday gatherings, I brought my signature apple pie and helped with dishes afterward. I never wanted Jackson caught between two battling mothers. My sister Margaret, 3 years younger and far more outspoken than me, warned me early on. "Alberta, you're letting that woman walk all over you. You need to establish boundaries." But I brushed her concerns aside. "Family harmony is worth a few compromises," I told her. When the twins Lily and Lucas were born 8 years ago, I was over the moon. Becoming a grandmother gave me new purpose after retirement. I would drive to their house twice a week to help with the babies, giving the new parents a break. Those early years were exhausting, but wonderful. The birthday issue began gradually. My birthday falls on June 15th, while Judith's is June 18th. For the first 2 years after Jackson and Stephanie married my son, balanced both celebrations admirably. He would take me to dinner on my birthday, then attend Judith's weekend-long celebration afterward. 8 years ago, everything changed. My birthday fell on a Tuesday, and Jackson called Monday night with apologies. "Mom, I'm so sorry, but there's an emergency at work. I need to fly to Chicago tonight for an important client meeting. Can we reschedule your birthday dinner for next week?" I was disappointed but understanding. "Of course, sweetheart. Work comes first. Be safe." 3 days later, my friend Susan called. "Alberta, isn't that your son in Stephanie's Facebook photos? They look like they're having a wonderful time in Cancun." My heart dropped. I checked social media to find photos of Jackson, Stephanie, the twins, and Judith on a beach in Mexico. "Celebrating Mom's special day in paradise," read the caption. The timestamp showed they had left the very day Jackson claimed to be in Chicago. I sat alone in my kitchen staring at those photos for hours. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt more was the unnecessary lie. Why not simply tell me they had planned a trip for Judith? I would have understood. It was the deception that left me breathless with pain. When they returned, Jackson brought me a small souvenir and took me to dinner as promised. He never mentioned Cancun, and I never brought it up. I told myself it was a one-time lapse in judgment. But the next year, history repeated itself. This time, the excuse was Lily having a fever. The reality, discovered through another innocent social media post, was a week in the Hamptons with Judith renting a luxury beach house for everyone. The pattern continued reliably. Year 3 brought an excuse about car trouble that was actually a cruise to the Bahamas. Year 4 was a work retreat that turned out to be a wine country tour with Judith. Each time I discovered the truth indirectly, never through honest communication. By year 5, I began dreading June's approach. My birthday, once a time of celebration, became an annual reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. The worst part was knowing the twins were being taught that deceiving Grandma was acceptable family practice. Margaret urged confrontation. "Call him out, Alberta. This is emotional abuse." But I couldn't bring myself to create conflict. He's still a good son otherwise. I would insist. He calls weekly, brings the kids over for Sunday dinner once a month. Maybe her birthday is just more important to her than mine is to me. Even as I said those words, I knew they weren't true. Everything changed 3 years ago when my godmother Eleanor passed away at 92. We had always been close, but I had no idea she was wealthy. Eleanor had never married, had worked as an accountant, lived frugally, and had apparently invested brilliantly since the 1970s. The attorney called me to a reading of her will. "Ms. Hayes, your godmother has left you her entire estate valued at approximately $5.2 million. I nearly fell out of my chair. "There must be some mistake." The attorney smiled kindly. "No mistake. Eleanor was very clear. She said you were the daughter she never had, and she wanted you to enjoy life without financial concerns." As I drove home that day, my mind raced. My first thought was to call Jackson to tell him we were now financially secure. I could help with the twins' college funds, maybe assist with a down payment on a bigger house. But something stopped me. A small voice inside asked, "Would things be different if they knew? Would your birthday suddenly become worth celebrating if there was money attached to it?" That night, I called only one person. Margaret. "Holy smokes! Alberta, you're a millionaire." "Apparently so," I said, still in shock. "What are you going to do? Buy a mansion, travel the world?" "I'm not going to tell them," I heard myself say. What, who, not tell who? Jackson, Stephanie, any of them? Not yet. I want to see who loves me, not for what I could give them. There was a long pause before Margaret replied. "That's either the wisest or the saddest thing I've ever heard you say." Maybe it was both. I continued living in my modest 3-bedroom suburban home, driving my 8-year-old Honda and shopping with coupons. The only luxuries I allowed myself were upgrading my health insurance and secretly setting up college accounts for the twins. With the help of Eleanor's financial advisor, I invested most of the inheritance wisely. Each quarter I would review the portfolio growth with a sense of amazed gratitude. Eleanor had given me security, but more importantly, she had given me options I never thought I'd have. As each year passed and each birthday brought new excuses and discoveries of celebrations elsewhere, the money sat largely untouched, growing steadily. I began to wonder what I was waiting for. Permission to enjoy my life. A sign that I mattered to my family as much as they mattered to me. Little did I know that sign would come in the form of its absence on what would become my final forgotten birthday in that chapter of my life. Last year delivered the most painful birthday yet, a turning point disguised as just another disappointment. June had arrived with its usual promise of summer warmth and familiar dread. The pattern had become so predictable that I almost wrote the script myself. Jackson would make a promise, something would come up, and I would later discover they were celebrating with Judith. What made it worse was that Jackson had actually initiated plans that year. "Mom, for your birthday, I want to take you to that new Italian restaurant you mentioned. The twins are excited to give you their handmade cards." For a brief, foolish moment, I allowed hope to bloom. Perhaps 7 years of forgotten birthdays had finally registered. Perhaps this year would be different. The evening before my birthday, right on cue, my phone rang. "Mom, I have terrible news," Jackson said, his voice strained. "Stephanie has food poisoning from some bad takeout. She's been sick all day. We need to cancel dinner tomorrow." "Oh, no, poor thing," I replied automatically. "Of course we should cancel. Please tell her I hope she feels better soon." "Thanks for understanding, Mom. You're the best. We'll make it up to you, I promise." I spent my birthday alone, treating myself to a small cake from the local bakery and a glass of wine while watching an old movie. Margaret called to wish me happy birthday, but she was on a cruise with her husband, enjoying their retirement, as I should have been enjoying mine. 3 days later, I was on a video call with the twins. Lucas was showing me a seashell collection when Lily bounced into view, pigtails flying. "Grandma, guess what I went on an airplane and saw a dolphin, a real one?" My heart sank as Lucas added, "Yeah, we went to Hawaii and stayed in a hotel right on the beach. Grandma Judith got her own room with a hot tub." That sounds wonderful. I managed keeping my voice steady for the children, who were after all innocent in this ongoing charade. After the call with shaking hands, I checked Stephanie's Instagram. There they were, 8 photos of a Hawaiian paradise. Jackson pushing the twins on a beach swing, Stephanie and Judith with matching spa robes and tropical drinks. A birthday cake with "Happy 58th Birthday Mom" written in chocolate, all posted just hours after our call. That night, I sat alone in my garden as darkness fell. The tears came silently at first, then in heaving sobs that left me gasping. It wasn't just about a missed birthday dinner anymore. It was 7 years of deliberate exclusion. 7 years of lies. 7 years of being shown in the clearest possible terms that I was an afterthought in my son's life. Margaret called the next day as if sensing something was wrong. Hawaii was all I could say when she asked about my birthday. "What? They went to Hawaii for Judith's birthday. Stephanie supposedly had food poisoning." My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "That's it!" Margaret exploded. "I'm calling Jackson right now. This has gone far enough." "No," I said firmly. "No confrontation. Alberta, you can't keep letting them treat you this way. You need to stand up for yourself." "I know," I said quietly, "but not the way you think." The following week, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Kamala was a woman about my age with kind eyes and a direct manner I appreciated immediately. "What brings you here today?" she asked. For the first time, I said aloud what I had barely admitted to myself. I have allowed my family to treat me as if I don't matter, and I want to stop. Over the next several sessions, Dr. Kamala helped me understand the dynamic I had allowed to develop. By never expressing your hurt, never establishing consequences, what lesson have you taught your son? The answer was painful but clear. That I don't matter. That it's okay to lie to me. And what do you want to teach him instead? I thought about that for a long time. That I deserve basic respect. That I won't chase after people who don't value my presence. Even if that person is your only child. Especially then, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Because he's teaching his children how to treat me and eventually how to treat him when they're grown. Kamala nodded. So what will you do differently? The plan crystallized slowly. I wouldn't confront Jackson with angry accusations. I wouldn't demand apologies or explanations. I would simply stop being available for disrespect. I would rebuild my life around people who showed up for me, around activities that fulfilled me, and in a place that represented the fresh start I desperately needed. I called Margaret that evening to share my decision. "I'm going to use Eleanor's gift," I told her. "I'm going to buy a house somewhere beautiful, somewhere I've always wanted to live. I'm going to move without telling any of them, and I'm not going to chase after their attention anymore." "Whoa," Margaret breathed. "That's a big move. Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." What about the twins? I'll always be available to them, always. But I need to show them through actions, not just words, that people should be treated with respect. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of lightness. I was taking control of my narrative instead of waiting for others to include me in theirs. The next day, I called a real estate agent named Thomas, who had been recommended by a friend. There was something fitting about sharing a name with my late husband. It felt like a good omen. I'm looking for a fresh start, I explained. Something by the water with character and charm, a place that feels like it could be in a movie about second chances. Thomas laughed. I love clients who know what they want. Let's find your second act home. Over the next few months, I looked at properties in coastal towns from Florida to Maine. Some were too ostentatious, others too isolated. I wanted elegance without pretension, community without intrusion. The seventh property was in a small coastal town in Maine. As soon as we turned onto the private drive lined with ancient oak trees, I felt a flutter of excitement. The villa wasn't massive by millionaire standards, but it was certainly grand compared to anything I'd ever lived in. 4 bedrooms each with its own bathroom, a chef's kitchen with ocean views, a wraparound porch where I could watch both sunrise and sunset. But it was the location that took my breath away. Perched on a bluff overlooking the Atlantic, the property included a winding path down to a small private beach. Standing on that shore, watching waves crash against rocks that had endured centuries of storms, I felt something click into place. This is it, I told Thomas. This is where I begin again. The asking price was $3 million a number that would have seemed incomprehensible to me just a few years ago. Now it represented not just a home, but a statement I was worthy of beauty, comfort, and peace. I made an offer that afternoon, requesting a specific closing date, June 15th, my next birthday. It seemed fitting to give myself the gift of a new beginning on the day that had brought so much disappointment. As spring progressed, I began quietly preparing for my move. I sorted through decades of accumulated possessions, keeping only what had true sentimental value or would suit my new home. I donated furniture, books, and kitchenware to a women's shelter. I digitized old photographs and papers. Each item I released felt like shedding a layer of the person I had been, the woman who silently accepted less than she deserved. By the time May arrived, my house looked curiously unlived in, as if I had already departed in spirit. I hired professional movers for my birthday week, scheduled an interior decorator to help furnish my new home, and met with my accountant to ensure all financial arrangements were in order. The only person who knew all the details was Margaret, who promised to help with the move. Throughout these preparations, I maintained my usual contact with Jackson and his family. Sunday dinners once a month. Weekly phone calls. I bought the twins' Easter baskets in April and attended Lucas's school play in May. If Jackson noticed any change in me, he didn't mention it. 2 weeks before my birthday, right on schedule, Jackson called. "Mom, I have some bad news about your birthday." He began, his voice carrying that now familiar tone of rehearsed regret. "Lily has a school performance that day, and we really can't miss it." I knew for a fact that the twins' school year had ended the previous week. This lie wasn't even creative. "I understand completely," I said calmly. "Family comes first." There was a brief pause, perhaps surprise at my easy acceptance. "We'll celebrate another time, I promise." "Of course," I replied. "Give the kids a hug for me." After hanging up, I felt not the usual sting of rejection, but a strange sense of closure. This would be the last birthday he would forget, because it would be the last one where his remembrance mattered to me so desperately. In the final days before the move, Margaret arrived to help. We spent evenings looking at furniture catalogs for the new house and mornings packing the last essential items. Together, we planned what would become the most significant social media post of my life. Are you nervous? Margaret asked the night before my birthday. No, I realized with surprise. For the first time in years, I'm excited about my birthday, because this one is truly about me. The morning of my 62nd birthday dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself approved of my plans. I woke early in my bedroom of 25 years, for the last time the walls now bare of family photographs. I performed a small ritual Dr. Kamala had suggested. Standing in the center of the empty room, I spoke aloud to the house that had sheltered my family through decades of life changes. Thank you for being our home. Thank you for the memories both joyful and painful. They have all shaped me into who I am today. Downstairs, Margaret had prepared a special birthday breakfast, blueberry pancakes, my favorite since childhood. We ate at the small kitchen table, the same one where I had helped Jackson with homework, where I had cried after Thomas died, where I had opened Eleanor's unexpected inheritance letter. Any birthday messages? Margaret asked, nodding toward my silent phone. Not a one, I confirmed. Not even from the twins. Does it hurt? I considered the question carefully. Less than I expected. It feels more like confirmation that I'm making the right choice. The movers arrived precisely at 8, efficient and professional. Within 2 hours, they had loaded my carefully labeled boxes and the few furniture pieces I was keeping. As they drove away, I stood in my empty living room surrounded by the echoes of a life that no longer fit. Ready for your new adventure? Margaret asked, car keys in hand. More than ready. I took a final walkthrough of the empty house, running my fingers along familiar walls. In Jackson's old bedroom, I paused longest, remembering the little boy who once couldn't fall asleep without his mother's goodnight kiss. In the kitchen, I recalled thousands of family meals. In the garden, I thought of summer evenings, watching fireflies with the twins. Every memory was precious, even the painful ones. They weren't being abandoned, but carried forward, informing, but not dictating my future. At the front door, I hesitated only briefly before locking it for the final time. The spare key was already with the realtor who would list the house the following week. Another bridge burning behind me, ensuring I couldn't retreat to old patterns. The drive to Maine typically took about 6 hours, but Margaret and I were in no hurry. We took the scenic coastal route windows down to catch the early summer breeze. Remember those road trips we took with Mom and Dad? Margaret asked as we crossed the state line into Massachusetts. How could I forget Dad refusing to stop for anything less than an emergency, Mom sneaking us candy from her purse? We turned out okay, didn't we? Despite everything. I glanced at my sister, so different from me in personality, yet connected by the unbreakable bond of shared history. We did. You married a good man. I raised a son who still has time to become the man you raised him to be. Margaret finished for me. This isn't the end of your relationship with Jackson. It's a reset. For lunch, we stopped at an upscale seaside restaurant in New Hampshire. Margaret had made reservations and informed them it was my birthday, leading to a complimentary glass of champagne with our meal. To Alberta, Margaret toasted, raising her glass. To becoming visible again. To new beginnings, I added, clinking my glass against hers. The champagne tasted of possibilities. Back on the road, I grew quieter as we neared our destination. This wasn't just a vacation or a visit. I was driving toward my new life, leaving behind decades of familiarity. The GPS directed us off the highway onto increasingly smaller roads until we were winding through a picturesque Maine town. Charming shops lined the main street. People walked dogs or pushed strollers, unhurried and content. Your new neighborhood, Margaret commented. It looks like a postcard. Wait until you see the house. As we turned onto the private drive leading to my new home, I held my breath. What if it didn't feel the same as when I first saw it? What if I had made a terrible mistake? But rounding the final curve, seeing the villa come into view against the backdrop of the Atlantic Ocean, all doubts vanished. The graceful lines of the architecture, the sunlight glinting off windows, the sound of waves audible even through closed car windows, all combined to create a sense of rightness that brought tears to my eyes. "Oh, Alberta," Margaret whispered. "It's magnificent." Thomas the realtor was waiting on the front steps, a wide smile on his face and a set of keys in his hand. "Happy birthday, Ms. Hayes, and welcome home." Walking through the front door as the owner for the first time felt surreal. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating hardwood floors and creating patterns on the walls, still waiting for my personal touch. The main living area opened onto a panoramic view of the Atlantic, endless blue stretching to the horizon. "The previous owners left the window treatments and appliances as agreed," Thomas explained as he gave us a tour. "Everything has been professionally cleaned and inspected." Each room we entered reinforced my decision. The primary bedroom suite with its ocean-facing balcony, the library with built-in shelves waiting for my books, the kitchen where I imagined hosting family holidays if we ever reached that point again, the guest rooms where the twins could stay, decorating their own space over time. As Thomas handed me all the documentation and prepared to leave, he paused. "If you don't mind my saying so, this house has been waiting for someone who truly appreciates it. I think you'll be very happy here." After he left, the moving truck arrived. Margaret and I directed the placement of my belongings, which looked almost comically sparse in the generous space. "You're going to need more furniture," she observed. "I'm meeting with an interior designer tomorrow. I want to start fresh, choose pieces that reflect who I am now, not who I was trying to be for everyone else." When the movers finished, Margaret produced another bottle of champagne she had packed in a cooler. We took flutes out to the deck overlooking the ocean and toasted again as the afternoon sun warmed our faces. "I can't believe this is mine," I said, gesturing to the stunning view. "Believe it," Margaret replied firmly. "You've earned every bit of this." As evening approached, we ordered dinner delivery from a local seafood restaurant recommended by Thomas. We ate on the deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular colors. "When are you going to tell them?" Margaret finally asked the question that had hovered unspoken between us all day. "Tomorrow," I decided. "Tonight is just for us, for celebrating. Tomorrow is soon enough for the rest of the world to know." That night I slept in my new bedroom, lulled by the distant sound of waves against the shore. For the first time in years, I didn't fall asleep thinking about Jackson or the twins or what I could have done differently. I fell asleep thinking about paint colors for the living room, the garden I would plant, and the writing desk I wanted for the library. I fell asleep thinking about me. The morning after my birthday, Margaret and I put our plan into action. I had hired a professional photographer named Danielle to capture my new home in its best light. She arrived promptly at 9 equipment in tow. "The goal is casual elegance," I explained. "I want the photos to look inviting, but not showy." "I understand completely," Danielle nodded. "Let's start with the exterior and work our way in taking advantage of the morning light on the ocean side." While Danielle began setting up, Margaret convinced me to get my hair and makeup done professionally. "If you're making a statement, make it completely," she insisted. The local salon had an opening, so I spent 2 hours being pampered while Margaret supervised the photographer. When I returned, my sister whistled appreciatively. "Look at you all glammed up now for the outfit." We had debated clothing options extensively. Nothing too formal, which might appear trying too hard. Nothing too casual, which wouldn't do justice to the occasion. We settled on white linen pants, a silk turquoise blouse that matched the ocean view, and simple pearl earrings that had been my mother's. "Perfect," Margaret declared. "Elegant, but approachable. Exactly like your new home." Danielle photographed me in various locations throughout the property. relaxing in the window seat of the library, standing in the chef's kitchen, strolling along my private beach access path. Each shot was carefully composed to appear natural while showcasing both me and my new surroundings. The final and most important shot was taken on the oceanfront deck, seated in an Adirondack chair, wine glass in hand, gazing out at the Atlantic with a serene smile. The composition suggested contentment, independence, and yes, a certain undeniable affluence. After Danielle left, promising to send the edited photos within hours, Margaret and I sat down to craft the social media post that would announce my transformation to the world. This required delicate balance. I wanted to be honest, without being vindictive, clear, without being confrontational. "Remember, this isn't about punishing Jackson," Margaret cautioned. "It's about reclaiming your narrative." We worked through several drafts before settling on the final text. New chapter, new view. After 62 years of putting everyone else first, I've finally given myself the birthday gift I deserve: peace, beauty, and a place to call my own. Eternally grateful to my godmother, Eleanor, whose generous inheritance made this oceanfront dream possible. Looking forward to hosting friends and family who make time to visit. Life begins when you decide to live it fully. The wording was deliberate. I didn't explicitly mention being forgotten on my birthday, but included the date in the timestamp. I acknowledged the inheritance, openly preventing speculation or gossip. Most importantly, the phrase, "family who make time to visit," sent a clear but dignified message about my expectations moving forward. When Danielle's photos arrived, they exceeded my expectations. The villa looked like something from a luxury real estate magazine, and I appeared confident and at peace. "Ready?" Margaret asked as we prepared to post everything. My finger hovered over the screen. This was more than a social media announcement. It was a declaration of independence. Once posted, there would be no going back to the invisible, accommodating woman I had been. "Ready." I confirmed and pressed share. Within minutes, notifications began appearing. Former colleagues expressing surprise and congratulations. Neighbors from my old community sending well wishes. Friends I hadn't connected with in years, reaching out to reconnect. What was conspicuously absent was any reaction from Jackson Stephanie or any member of that family circle. The silence spoke volumes. "Give it time," Margaret advised. "They're probably in shock." At 7, we left for a birthday dinner reservation at the town's best restaurant, leaving my phone behind deliberately. This evening wasn't about their reaction. It was about celebrating my step into a new life. The restaurant staff, tipped off by Margaret, brought a small cake with a candle. Fellow diners, strangers who would become neighbors, offered birthday wishes. For the first time in years, I felt seen and celebrated on my special day. When we returned home around 10, I reluctantly checked my phone. 15 missed calls from Jackson, 3 from Stephanie, 1 surprisingly from Judith. Dozens of text messages ranging from confused to demanding. "Jackson, Mom, what is this you bought a house when? How, Stephanie? Why wouldn't you tell us about this inheritance? We're family." Jackson, "Please call me back ASAP. We need to talk." Stephanie, "The kids are asking why Grandma moved without saying goodbye." Judith, Alberta, "I think we need to discuss this situation like adults." The messages continued in this vein, each one centered on the sender's feelings of shock or exclusion. Not one included a birthday wish. "Are you going to respond tonight?" Margaret asked. I set the phone down. "No. For once, they can wait for my convenience, not the other way around." That night, I slept soundly, lulled by the rhythm of waves and the knowledge that I had finally stood up for myself in the most eloquent way possible by valuing myself enough to change my life. The next morning, I was enjoying coffee on my deck when the doorbell rang. Margaret had left early for a grocery run, so I answered it myself, unprepared for who stood on the other side. Jackson looking tired and rumpled as if he'd traveled all night, which I realized he probably had. "Mom," he said, his voice a mixture of confusion and hurt. "What is going on?" I stepped back, allowing him to enter. "Come in. Would you like some coffee?" He followed me to the kitchen, his eyes darting around, taking in the spaciousness, the ocean view, the obvious luxury that I had never before displayed. I poured him coffee in calm silence, allowing the moment to stretch. "This place is," he began. "Mine," I finished simply. "My new home." "But how—" "When that post said something about an inheritance." I gestured toward the deck. "Let's sit outside. The view is spectacular." Once settled in the Adirondack chairs, coffee mugs in hand, I told him about Eleanor's inheritance. His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. 3 years, he repeated. "You've had this money for 3 years, and never told any of us yes. But why? We could have helped you invest it, find a good financial advisor. We could have—" "I had an excellent financial advisor," I interrupted gently. "Eleanor's team has managed the money beautifully. Still, why the secrecy? Why shut out your family?" The question hung in the salt-tinged air between us. This was the moment I had both dreaded and anticipated. How to express years of accumulated hurt without sounding bitter or accusatory? "Jackson, when was my birthday?" He blinked at the apparent non sequitur. "What? My birthday, when was it?" "It was—" Realization dawned on his face. "It was yesterday." "Yes. And where were you?" His gaze dropped to his coffee mug. "We had Lily's school thing. I told you about it." "Lily's school ended last week." A flush crept up his neck. "Mom, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. For 8 years, you have deliberately scheduled trips with Judith during my birthday week. 8 years of transparent excuses and discovered lies." "That's not fair," he protested. "Judith's birthday is only 3 days after yours. It makes sense to combine celebrations, and she usually plans these big trips. Has Judith ever missed her birthday celebration to attend mine?" Silence. "Have you ever told her you couldn't make her celebration because you were celebrating with me?" More silence. "When was the last time you actually remembered my birthday with more than a belated phone call?" He had no answer. "The inheritance gave me freedom, Jackson. Freedom to finally see clearly that I had become an afterthought in your life. And freedom to choose a different path forward. So this is punishment." His voice hardened. "Moving across the country without a word because you're mad about some birthday parties. This isn't about punishment. It's about self-respect. It's about no longer making myself constantly available to people who don't value my time or feelings. It's about showing the twins through actions, not just words, how family members should treat each other." Before Jackson could respond, my phone rang with a video call from the twins. I answered to see their excited faces filling the screen. "Grandma, is that really your castle by the ocean?" Lily asked, eyes wide. "We saw the pictures. Do we get to visit? Do we get our own rooms?" Lucas added. I smiled genuinely at their enthusiasm. "It's not quite a castle, but yes, there are guest rooms for when you visit." In the background, I could see Stephanie hovering, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and calculation. She leaned into frame. "Alberta, what a surprise the house is. Lovely. You should have told us you were looking to move. We could have helped." The same refrain. "Why didn't you let us manage this significant life decision for you? I wanted it to be a surprise," I said simply. "Sometimes it's nice to do things your own way." After promising the twins a video tour later, I ended the call and turned back to Jackson, who had been watching the exchange with a troubled expression. "They love you, Mom. We all do. This feels like you're punishing us for something we didn't even know was hurting you so badly." "Did you really not know?" I asked softly. All those years of canceled plans and transparent excuses, did you truly believe I didn't notice or care? Did you think so little of my intelligence or my feelings? Jackson's defenses began to crumble. It wasn't like that. It just happened. Stephanie's family is very traditional about birthdays. Judith expects certain things. It was easier to lie to me than to disappoint her, I finished. I understand the choice you made. I'm just no longer willing to pretend it doesn't hurt. What do you want from me, Mom? An apology. Fine. I'm sorry, we should have handled things better. But moving across the country without a word, buying a multi-million-dollar house and announcing it on social media, that's extreme. I don't want an apology extracted under duress. What I want is respect moving forward. I want honesty. I want to be considered when family plans are made. Most of all, I want you to see me as a person with my own life and feelings, not just as a role, mom, who exists only in relation to your needs. Jackson fell silent, staring out at the ocean. I could almost see him processing, reevaluating years of family dynamics from this new perspective. I never meant to make you feel unimportant, he finally said, his voice quieter. I know, but impact matters more than intention. Your choices communicated very clearly where I ranked in your priorities. So what now? You live here and we just visit occasionally. That's it. That depends entirely on you, I said. I'll always be your mother. I'll always love you and the twins. My door is always open. But I will no longer chase after people who don't make time for me. The balance has shifted. It's your turn to make an effort, if you want me in your lives. Margaret returned then, grocery bags in hand, creating a natural break in the conversation. Jackson left shortly after promising to call soon, his expression still troubled but perhaps more thoughtful than when he had arrived. As I helped Margaret unpack groceries, she asked, "Do you think he understood?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But for the first time, I'm okay either way. My happiness can't depend on his choices anymore." It was a hard-won freedom, this detachment. Not an absence of love, but a healthier expression of it with boundaries that protected my well-being while leaving space for reconciliation. As days turned into weeks, Jackson's initial shock gradually transformed into reflection. He began calling regularly, not out of obligation but with genuine interest in my new life. The conversations were sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but increasingly authentic. The months after my move brought transformation in ways I hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just my address that changed, but my entire approach to life. I settled into my coastal community with surprising ease. My next-door neighbor Barbara, a retired literature professor, invited me to join her book club within my first week. The local library welcomed my offer to start a weekly writing workshop for seniors. The coffee shop on Main Street had my order memorized by month 2. Each morning I walked along the beach at sunrise, sometimes collecting shells, other times simply listening to the waves. The ocean became my counselor and companion, its constant rhythm reminding me that change is the only true constant in life. I furnished my new home, gradually choosing each piece with intention. The formal dining room became a bright art studio. The extra bedroom transformed into a library with a reading nook overlooking the water. The kitchen, always the heart of any home, welcomed new friends for impromptu dinner parties. My relationship with Dr. Kamala continued through video sessions. "I notice you're smiling more," she observed during one call. "Your whole energy has shifted." "I feel lighter," I admitted, "as if I've set down a burden I didn't realize I was carrying." The burden of unmet expectations. The burden of making myself smaller to accommodate others, of believing my worth depended on being needed. Financial independence had given me options, but emotional independence gave me peace. I rediscovered passions I had set aside during decades of putting others first. I took a watercolor class. I joined a hiking group for seniors. I volunteered at a local literacy program. For the first time since Thomas died, perhaps even before I was living according to my own rhythms and desires. The revelation was both exhilarating and bittersweet. Had I really waited until my 60s to claim my own life? Meanwhile, my family was undergoing its own adjustment. Jackson called weekly with updates on the twins and increasingly transparent accounts of family activities. When he mentioned plans for Judith's upcoming birthday cruise, there was a new awareness in his voice, an acknowledgement of the pattern we were both now conscious of. Stephanie's attempts at reconciliation were more awkward, but seemingly sincere. She sent photos of the twins' activities with brief, friendly notes. She asked advice about Lucas's reading struggles, an area where my teaching experience proved helpful. Small gestures, but significant shifts from previous dynamics. The twins were the most adaptable, embracing the idea of a grandma with a beach house with uncomplicated enthusiasm. We had weekly video calls where they showed me art projects or performed newly learned skills. I sent them care packages with Maine souvenirs and books about the ocean. Judith remained conspicuously absent from these reconciliation efforts, which surprised no one. One unexpected outcome was that her absence created space for my relationship with Stephanie to develop independently, without the competitive undercurrent that had characterized our interactions for years. 3 months after my move, Jackson called with a tentative question. "Mom, would it be okay if we visited for a weekend? The twins really want to see your new place, and well, so do we." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it. "How about next month?" "Actually, I was thinking about June, for your birthday." His voice held a note of uncertain hope. "If that's not too presumptuous." The suggestion caught me off guard. "You want to celebrate my birthday here?" "If you'll let us. I thought maybe we could start a new tradition. Your birthday at your house properly celebrated. No excuses, no competing plans." I took a moment to check in with my feelings before responding. Was I ready to risk disappointment again? Was the gesture genuine or motivated by access to my newly revealed resources? But I realized that was old thinking, the protective skepticism of someone who had been hurt repeatedly. The woman I was becoming chose to allow for possibility, for growth, for changed patterns. "I would love that," I told him. "Thank you for suggesting it." As spring turned to summer, I began planning my birthday celebration with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Not the desperate hope of past birthdays, wondering if plans would be kept, but the calm confidence of a woman who would enjoy the day regardless of who showed up. I decided to host a week-long family gathering at the villa. Margaret and her husband would come. Jackson, Stephanie, and the twins would have their first extended stay. I even, after considerable reflection, extended an invitation to Judith, believing that true healing might require including everyone in this new chapter. Jackson called frequently as the date approached, confirming details, mentioning small surprises being planned. "The kids are counting down the days," he told me. "Lucas asked if we could make this an annual tradition." I allowed myself cautious optimism, but maintained healthy boundaries. My happiness no longer hinged on their presence. I had built a fulfilling life that existed independently of my role as mother and grandmother. Their participation would enrich that life, but not define it. The week before my birthday, I received an unexpected call from Judith. Her voice was stiff but not hostile. "Alberta, I understand you've invited me to your birthday gathering." "Yes," I confirmed. "You're welcome to join us." "May I ask why we've hardly been close?" "Because holding on to resentment serves no one. Because the twins should see that adults can move past differences. Because it's time for a new chapter, for all of us." A long pause followed. "I'll be there," she finally said. "Thank you for the invitation." It was a small victory, but a significant one. Not because I needed Judith's approval or even her friendship, but because I had reached a place where her presence no longer threatened my sense of self. When my 63rd birthday arrived, I woke in my ocean-front bedroom to the sound of excited whispers and small footsteps in the hallway. Opening my door, I found Lily and Lucas holding handmade cards and a somewhat lopsided breakfast tray. "Happy birthday, Grandma!" they chorused. Behind them stood Jackson and Stephanie, looking both pleased and slightly nervous. "We wanted to be the first to celebrate you today," Jackson said. Throughout that day and the week that followed, I witnessed what felt like the beginning of a healed family dynamic. Not perfect, not without awkward moments, but characterized by more authentic communication than we'd managed in years. Judith arrived on the second day, bringing an expensive bottle of wine and a strained smile that gradually relaxed as she realized this wasn't a competition, but a genuine attempt at harmony. Watching her interact with the twins in my home, I saw glimpses of what had drawn Jackson and Stephanie into her orbit. She was entertaining, generous in certain ways, and clearly adored her grandchildren. The difference now was that her presence didn't diminish mine. We occupied different spaces in the family constellation, both valuable in our own ways. On the final evening of the family gathering, as we all sat on the deck watching the sunset, Lucas asked a question that captured the journey perfectly. "Grandma, are you happier now that you live in the beach house?" All adult conversations stopped attention, turning to my response. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm happier because I finally understood that taking care of myself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Like on airplanes when they tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others." "But you didn't have to move so far away," Lily pointed out with a child's directness. "Sometimes distance helps us see things more clearly," I explained. "And sometimes you need to change your surroundings to change old patterns." Jackson caught my eye across the table, a moment of silent understanding passing between us. We had both learned difficult lessons over the past year. I had learned to value myself enough to set boundaries. He had learned that relationships require nurturing and respect to flourish. Later, after the twins were in bed, the adults gathered in the living room with glasses of wine. Judith surprised me by raising her glass first. "To Alberta," she said, her usual commanding tone softened slightly, "for teaching all of us something about standing up for yourself. It takes courage to change the rules mid-game." The acknowledgement coming from the woman who had benefited most from the old dynamics felt like closure on a chapter of my life. As I looked around at my family gathered in the home I had created for myself, I realized that Eleanor's inheritance had given me far more than financial security. It had given me the opportunity to discover my own worth, to establish healthier patterns, and ultimately to create a more authentic relationship with my family. The journey hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been pain, confrontation, and difficult truths to face. But sitting there watching the moonlight play on the waves through my windows, I felt a profound sense of peace. At 63, I had finally become the main character in my own life story, not by abandoning my roles as mother and grandmother, but by bringing my full, authentic self to those relationships, by showing my family, especially the twins, that respect is earned not by making yourself smaller, but by standing confidently in your own worth. It's never too late to rewrite your story. It's never too late to become visible. It's never too late to teach others how to treat you through the quiet dignity of your own choices. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself with family members? What boundaries have you set to protect your peace? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and the like button too. Remember, it's never too late to become the main character in your own life. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the courage to value yourself.